Welcome to Off the Record, a legal podcast.
Hey, welcome to Off the Record, a legal podcast with attorney Rhett Burney. I'm your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today we are diving into the essentials you need to know about probate in South Carolina. Rhett, great to see you.
Kevin, how have you been?
I've been good. How about you?
Oh, man, can't complain. It's great here.
All right, well, we're going to be dispelling some myths and confusion about probate today. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so tell me what the most common misconceptions or misunderstandings people have when it comes to probate.
Yeah, so when we say probate, what we're talking about is going through the court process to have an estate administered. So most people think and are scared because they hear all the bad stuff, that it takes forever, that it's complicated, that they're going to lose their money, they're going to getting the government involved in their lives, and they're just frightened by it, and they think it's a bad thing. I mean, it's not a fun thing, but it is a process that if you don't try to administer it yourself, let a professional handle it, it's not as bad as other people may make it seem.
Why do you think people have that perception of it? Why is it being thought of as something that's far worse than it is?
They're probably getting the feedback from someone who's tried to do it themselves, that they didn't hire an expert to do it. And if I don't know what I'm doing, if I'm trying to remodel my house, it's going to take a lot longer for me to do it. It's probably not going to turn out too well. It's probably going to look terrible. And it's the same way as going through probate and trying to do it themselves. And if they don't know what they're doing, every time they turn around, they're going to be doing something wrong.
I've heard people compare probate to an IRS audit. Is that similar, or is that dramatic?
No, an IRS audit is terrible. That is very, very dramatic. Probate doesn't happen quickly, but time passes by quickly as well. You didn't close an estate 9 months to a year or whatever. So it's not as bad as an estate audit. But it can be really bad if the person who has died didn't plan their estate properly. That can make it a lot more difficult. So yeah, if someone dies and they didn't do any estate planning, and they leave a lot of heirs, and they have a lot of stuff, and they leave no directions, that can make it very, very difficult. So I don't think when people say the probate process is bad, I think it's usually those people who have to handle it because someone didn't do proper planning.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That it's the people that have gone through the weeds with that are the ones who are going to talk the worst about it. So on that note, what can people do with their estate planning to help avoid going to probate?
Yeah, do a comprehensive plan, have a will drafted, have a power of attorney, make sure that the deed to your house is a joint right of survivorship deed. If you're married, make sure you have a living will, make sure that you've named beneficiaries to your checking account, to your savings account, to your investment account, to your IRA, to your 401k, your CDs, and make sure you go through all that. Make sure that your title to your car has someone else's name on it along with yours. There's so many things that people forget about that are really quite easy and relatively cheap that can make the whole process a lot easier. And one thing that everybody thinks, they think if I leave a list that just says, or if I tell my family at Christmas time, this is where I want my couch to go and my shotgun to go, that it's all going to be okay. Or people think, my family will never fight over all my stuff when they're gone. They're not going to fight over it. I know them. Well, you know what? They do. And it may not be their family per se, but it may be their son's wife who wants to fight about it, or their daughter's husband who wants to fight about it. So yeah, that myth of everybody's going to know what I want to have happen when I die, that's usually the first thing that causes that a problem.
I started a business with a couple of buddies some years ago, and I was talking to my buddy who's a lawyer, and I was like, he was talking about the contract and all that, and I said, yeah, we're best friends. Like nothing's probably going to happen that would ever be bad. And he just looked at me and shook his head and smiled. He said, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
Oh yeah. You know why you have a contract? Not when things are good, but when things go bad. That's why you have to have things in writing. That's why you have to explain it. I mean, there's a reason for people come in all the time and they just say, hey, that's not how Dad wanted his will to be. Well, guess what? That's how Dad wrote it out. So make sure it's in writing, because that is what's important.
Do people challenge, not like legally challenge, but do people, like when you talk to people, are you like, no, that's not That's not what they wanted. That can't be right. Do
Oh, yeah,
people
all the time. Every single day, people come in and say, yeah, that's not how dad wanted it. I don't know why he did it like that. He didn't tell me that that's what he was going to do. He told me something else. And I'm seeing the challenges of wills go up. When I first started practicing, we hardly ever challenged a will, but we are seeing a lot of our cases right now are will contests. And I don't know why that's on the rise. And it may be because people aren't seeing lawyers. They're doing this online stuff, printing out all these do-it-yourself wills, and they're not done right. There's a lot of inconsistencies in them. And that kind of opens the door for the will contest.
Interesting. So I was just curious if they just are venting their frustrations to you, but you're saying they're actually legally challenging these wills.
Oh, they're challenging all day long, all day long. And the ones that are challenged are the ones that were not done by lawyers, where people are doing it themselves, handwriting it themselves, typing it themselves, buying the forms at the office supply, or printing them all online because they're creating a mess. They're not doing it properly. They think that they're doing it properly, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, that's a common theme on this show, isn't it? So who is generally involved in the probate process?
A paralegal, a lawyer. There's a lot of documents that have to be done. Really what happens, if Kevin, let's say that you're administering an estate for somebody that you love, and they named you as the executor or as the personal representative. You just come into my office, go into a lawyer's office, bring whatever documents that you have, bank statements, wills, investment account statements, anything like that. You dump them in the lawyer's lap. Let us go through them. We work through that. We put it in the format that the probate court wants to see it in. Call you back in a couple of weeks later. You sign it. You go home. We deal with it. So it's usually going to be a lawyer and a paralegal dealing with the administrative assistant in the probate court. And really, Kevin, all we would need you for is just to come sign a few documents.
Oh, so that's not nearly as painful as people make it sound.
No, we just need you to come in, drink some coffee, and just sign here, and you'll be okay.
Well, that's definitely a misconception then, because I've heard it. I think I've told you this before, maybe, but my wife's a realtor, so I've heard, she's talked about some probate stuff that people have had to go to, and it just seems to have this really negative connotation about it.
Yeah, it always does, and the common thread through all of that is just poor planning, right? Anytime you go to build a house, if you don't plan that house out, your plans aren't right, the house is going to fall down, or you're going to have problems. It is no different than in the probate process as well. If you don't do the proper planning for your estate, you will have problems. Your family members, your loved ones will have problems with it. And when you hear people complain about, oh, yes, this took so long, or, oh, you'll never understand what I just went through. I guarantee you that if you look behind the curtain, you're going to see bad planning on somebody's part.
So walk me through the steps of probate in South Carolina.
Yeah. So you come into my office. Hopefully you have a will that the decedent, the person who's died, has left. You hand it to us. We get the petition signed. We send it to the probate court along with a copy of the death certificate, the obituary. They then appoint you. The probate court then appoints you as, in South Carolina, it's called the personal representative. Other states, you may have heard the executor. And that gives you the authority then to go open up a bank account if we need to, or to sign a deed if we need to, or anything. You're pretty much acting as though you're that person who died in order to divide the estate amongst the heirs. And hopefully those heirs are listed in a will. If not, we have what we call intestacy in South Carolina. It means dying without a will. And when you die without a will, the law tells us how your estate is going to be divided. And so there may be people who are heirs of an estate who the person who died didn't really want to have as the heirs to their estate, but because they didn't have the proper estate planning, somebody else gets assets that they really didn't intend on. So we divide the assets, and then eventually we close the estate. Most estates are closed in 9 months to a year. I do have some that have been open many, many years. And again, that was because of bad planning. Those make it more difficult.
I was going to ask what holds up the probate process. Anything else other than just what you've already said about bad planning and not having your ducks in a row?
Family members, unreasonable family members who aren't willing, who want to fight about everything. If you have 3 family members and you're trying to divide $1, guess what? You're going to have a penny left over, and they may be fighting over those types of things. So most of it is the personalities of the people involved, or are really just people that don't help us as lawyers do what we need them to do. We have to beg clients to bring us certain documents. We have to beg clients to come sign certain documents. If we have great clients as well who are on top of things, but for the most part, it's poor planning and people who just don't cooperate with their attorney.
What are some common mistakes people make during the probate process that can cause delays and send it to over that 9 months to a year mark?
Yeah, lying to their lawyers.
That's great.
I don't know why people lie to lawyers, but they do. They lie to us all
They're
the
ashamed.
time.
They're ashamed, Brett.
Steal from the estate.
Oh,
As
wow.
a personal representative, you have the power to sign checks and to distribute assets, and sometimes they distribute it to themselves, even though that's not what's intended. Bad record keeping on their part. If you're writing checks out of a checkbook, write them down in the register. If bills are coming in on the house that we're still trying to address, make sure you pay the bills. It's just responsible stuff that they have to do. And some people just aren't. We have parents come in and have many children, and they don't know who to make the personal representative. Now, jokingly, I tell them to pick the child they dislike the most and name them the personal representative, because they're going to have to do a little bit of work. But name a responsible person who can take on, the responsibility of doing what we as lawyers need to have done in order for us to do our job. You can't just walk into a lawyer's office, hand them a check, and never come back until the end. There are certain things that we do need you to do because we don't have the information. We can't do our job.
I imagine there's got to be some cases where people have a hard time getting the documents you need, right?
Yeah, that does happen. That does happen. But we have tools. We have the powers of a subpoena. We fill out forms. That does happen. Banks give us a hard time sometimes. But usually, if you are the personal representative, that gives you a statutory, a legal right in order to get certain documents. And they're busy. If you were the personal representative of an estate, you're busy, you're working, you don't have time to go get it, or you just don't want to go get it. So we do have those issues sometimes, but for the most part, it's a pretty easy process because most documents are online these days, right? There's hardly anything that isn't online. And that brings me to a really, really, really good point. I think everybody needs, and I have one, in case of death file that lists all of your assets, all of your life insurance policies, maybe even your password, so your loved one knows how to get onto your online account. Keep that in a secret place. Keep that in your desk or whatever. So when you do die, the people that are left behind know where to go look for things, because it's great if you have $1 million in the bank, but if you don't tell everybody where that bank is, guess what? They're not going to find it. So I always recommend to clients, we hand clients, we have a little book that we give them, but it just lists out all the assets that people that you leave behind need to know about, so they know where to go find these things.
We've talked before with other areas of family law and estate planning of people who like to try to handle everything on their own, do it themselves. We've gone over all the pitfalls and why you shouldn't do that. We've compared it to being to having surgery or doing taxes. Is this something that people try to handle on their own without an experienced attorney?
Yeah, and what happens is they'll go into the probate court. The probate court will allow them to do it themselves. And what happens? The probate court, the ladies there, the men there, they can't give you legal advice. All they can do is have you sign the form. And if you're not putting the right information down on the form, then the estate's not going to be administered properly. And your wife, as a realtor, I bet she's run into the situation where somebody has died and the estate wasn't opened up, or the real estate wasn't passed properly through the estate, that they've had to go back and reopen an estate. And that happens lots of times, and that's a pain. And that's probably one of the nightmares that your wife's had to deal with as a realtor.
Yeah, she doesn't tell me everything, but I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. I always like to ask you for some stories. You got any good probate stories for me?
We hear those stories about them finding bodies in the houses and all that good stuff. I had a case one time where they left a treasure map for their loved ones. And so the person who died kind of made a game out of it. So they had to go around to different places to find, the money stuck here or the bank statement stuck here, which I thought was kind of a cool idea, make a death interesting. I mean, they bring in this treasure map and I'm looking at it. I'm like, this guy must have thought he was a pirate or whatever, look, just like a typical treasure map that you would think about. And it was kind of fun, kind of interesting. In the South, older ladies, it was a big deal to have china or silverware. We don't do a lot of that anymore. But I had one lady who had this huge silverware collection and a big family. And she thought everybody in the family wanted a knife and a fork and a spoon. And she must have had 50 individuals. And I had to keep all this stuff in my office. And every now and then somebody would show up and pick up a knife or a spoon or something like that. I thought, oh, this lady's killing me. It's killing me. But yeah, things like that.
I wouldn't do that, but I got to be honest. The treasure map is pretty spot on. I like that.
Something to work on, Kevin. I bet as guys, we're going to die first, so maybe that'll give your family something to look.
Yeah, honestly, they wouldn't be all that surprised. They wouldn't be all that surprised at all. They might be a little annoyed, but they aren't going to be very surprised.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's say my parent has died. Things were not in order. They've got a house. I'm dealing with this now. What's my first step?
Your first step is to really do an inventory of everything that they have. That everything meaning bank accounts, checking accounts, real estate, all of that. Gather it together. Do they have a will? A will may tell you exactly where everything's going to go. Did they name beneficiaries on certain accounts? Remember, a beneficiary is different than an heir. An heir is someone who receives something through a will. A beneficiary is someone who is named on a particular account, for instance, to receive something. Lay it all out, look at it, see what you've got, see if you can make sense of it, and then bring it to your friendly neighborhood lawyer and let them tell you how it needs to be done. We laugh. As soon as we see somebody coming in with a shopping bag full of paper, we know exactly what we've got. We have the next estate that we have to work on and go through all those documents. So yeah, get a garbage bag, throw it all in and bring it to me.
That's not so bad. That's pretty good. You might be careful. People listening to this podcast, they're going to start showing up with garbage bags of paper.
They will. But hey, that's what we do, and it's not unusual. That's not unusual. And I mentioned it earlier. Everybody should have that in case of death file. So for your parents, where to go look for these things. Why have to go through the treasure hunt map? Just know where it is so you can find it. Because really, our goal when we die is to make it easier on our loved ones.
Right.
And that's the whole point in all of these documents that we draft as lawyers, is to make it easier on those that we love behind. Now, if you don't love all the people you leave behind, then make it as difficult as you want to have any of those documents. But
yeah. Then you do the treasure map.
That's right. Leave them a treasure map. But yeah, if you really care about your family, your goal should be to do it properly.
Great. Well, thanks for tuning in to Off the Record, a legal podcast with attorney Rhett Burney. For more information or to connect with Rhett, you can visit rhettburney.com. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Rhett, always great to talk to you.
Kevin, can't wait to see you again. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.